Hello, and welcome to another Tech Talk. As some of you may be aware, my most recent encounter with Ubuntu did not go so well. Some of the problems were clearly due to a release candidate ISO that should never have been released, but also the software mishmash the latest Ubuntu LTS uses, such as a mix of GNOME 41 and GNOME 42, as well as an entire Snap subsystem with just one package installed, namely Firefox. Yuck. Maybe we can do better on our own. Stay tuned and find out. It recently occurred to me that if we want a reasonably stable GNOME 42 desktop workstation with the latest stable kernel my hardware needs, why not build it on top of Debian 11 Bullseye? Then, we just add the kernel and GNOME-specific packages we need from the unstable repos, while leaving the rest of the system alone. As a security blanket, we can set up Snapper so we can roll back should anything go wrong. Sounds like a good plan, so let's get started by booting up a KVM using the latest Debian GNOME Live ISO. Here's the live GNOME ISO from Debian 11. To keep things short today, we will just use the Calamares live installer. Not bore you guys too much. So here we go with the welcome screen. Before we continue, let me just fix some things here by launching settings. And first thing is I want to turn off the automatic suspend. This is a demo after all. I'll fix the screen resolution here in displays. We'll do 1920 by 1080. That looks better. And to make the fonts more reasonable, or readable rather, under accessibility, there's the large text option, which I'll turn on now. So let me just click quickly about. So just as a review, we're running 3.38.5 of the GNOME version, Bullseye. So that's as we expect. So let's do the welcome. Looks like all that default looks good to me for now. Let's click Start using Debian Linux. Getting started, that's for the old GNOME version, so I'll just close it. We'll ignore it today. We'll just launch the installed Debian Calamares installer. And there we go. I'll just click Next. I'll run through this as quick as possible. My time zone is Los Angeles. English default keyboard is fine. We're going to do manual partitioning today. The new partition table shall be a GPT, GUID partition table. And so for the first partition, we want the EFI partition, right? So I like to put in 600 megabytes here of type FAT32. And /boot/EFI is the mount point, and the boot flag to let the installer know which partition is booting. For the rest of the disk, the second and final partition will be ButterFS, the mount point will be root, and the boot flag will be root. So there we go. Very simple setup. 2 partitions. So I'm Stephen, login Stephen, and I'll call this machine Gnomian. You heard it here first. The Gnomian distro. Give myself a password, enter it twice for good measure. Click Next here. So the summary looks good. I'll just click Install. This will take some time. I'll use the magic of video editing to skip over the more boring parts, so you guys won't tune out. We can get to the meaty stuff as soon as possible. Okay, it's installed, so we're ready to restart. Let's hit Enter to eject the virtual CD-ROM. Okay, so the freshly installed Debian 11 GNOME system should be coming up. Okay. It's using the old kernel 5.10, which my more recent hardware just doesn't work very well with, so we're going to be fixing that. So let's log in. Enter my password. Okay, so we've got that welcome screen again, but we'll just go through the settings as we did before and fix certain things for the demonstration today. So power, we don't want the screen blanker to turn on, and we want to turn off the automatic suspend. Bring things into demo mode. The display screen resolution will be again 1920 by 1080. Click apply and keep changes. And there's accessibility. Let's turn on large text. And we'll click about. So just as a review, you've seen this already. 3.38.5 is the GNOME version, and we're running Bullseye, Debian 11. Okay, let's close that. Let's run through the welcome. First configuration. All these defaults will work fine for us today. Again, this is the old getting started tutorial that will no longer apply once we have the system upgraded with the latest GNOME. It's showing software updates are available. Let's view them. And yeah, OS updates and Thunderbird. Let's make sure our system's up to date before we continue. So restart and update. This is an offline update, kind of like what Microsoft Windows does. This is, in my opinion, a very good idea because you're not using any files or have any files open when they're updated. So we're up to date. Log in. All right, software updates installed. Yeah. Okay. Thunderbird's listed twice, don't know why, but we're up to date. Okay, so let's launch a terminal window. Okay, let's make that a little bigger, the font size. Let's fix that glaring white screen by first renaming the default profile from unnamed to Steven. And under colors, let's not use the system theme, but use GNOME Dark instead, and bold text in bright colors. And scrolling, let's turn off the scroll bar and limit, and the uncheck the limit scroll back history. Okay, that looks a lot better, for my eyes at least. Okay. So let's check the OS release, cat/etc/os-release. So yes, we're indeed running Debian 11 Bullseye. The file system table looks thusly. Now, if you prefer timeshift, the Btrfs subvolumes are configured correctly for timeshift, but we won't use timeshift, but rather snapper today. We're running kernel 5.10. As I mentioned earlier, that's a bit too old for my more recent hardware. So, also, we haven't set up swap yet. We'll be using ZRAM in a bit. We're using about half of our 20 gigabyte drive, which is plenty for the demonstration today. So let's spin up a root shell with sudo-s and clear the terminal. And let's double check things here. Let's do an apt update, and we're all up to date, as expected. So we just updated. And nothing to auto-remove, so no stale or orphan packages, or packages no longer needed. So let's do the ZRAM. apt install ZRAM-tools. Should do the trick. And let's configure our compressed ZRAM swap substitute by typing nano/etc/default/ZRAM swap. and hit enter. So as you can see, the fastest compression is LZ4. And for RAM, RAM and swap, I want the fastest algorithm. So we'll just stick with LZ4. And I want 1 gig swap size. A virtual swap partition compressed in RAM. Fantastic. That should speed things up much faster than a swap partition on a physical drive. So let's do a systemctl start zram swap dot service and get our zram going. And if we do a status, you can see the vendor preset is enabled, so I don't have to enable it manually. And it worked. We've got 1024 megabyte swap space. So now if we do free-h, you see we have swap configured properly. Because the Linux kernel is engineered and expects a bit of swap space to function properly without an out-of-memory process killing happening. Okay, next let's apt install snapper and snapper-GUI and hit return. Yes, we'll proceed. Okay, that's quick. That's a small package. Let's clear the terminal and let's do first a configuration with snapper-c root create-config/. All right, so now we can take snapshots of our root file system. So nano/etsy/snapper/configs/root, which we just created. And what I'd like to do here is give myself allowance or access to work with the config. So allow users, Stephen, let's put my username in here. And then the Arch Wiki, not the Debian Wiki, but the Arch Wiki has some good guidelines for the limits for timeline cleanup. So they recommend limit hourly is 5, limit daily is 7, limit weekly is 0, monthly 0, and also yearly 0. So worked very well for me. Again, you can find that in the Arch Wiki for Snapper. All right, now that's done. Let's fix the .snapshots directory where the snapshots are stored with Snapper with chmod a+rx /.snapshots, and also we want to change the group ownership. The ownership needs to remain root for a Snapper to function, but the group should be Stephen. So we'll do that with chown :Stephen /.snapshots. So this should be correctly configured, this directory, .snapshots namely. And it looks like it is. There you go. No snapshots yet. So let's do first a snapper list-configs. So we got a root config and a subvolume is / or @ is the subvolume name. So let's list what snapshots we currently have. No, we just have the single type 0, which is the current configuration for our root subvolume. So let's test this. Let's install neofetch with apt install neofetch. Let that do its thing. All right. Neofetch shows the following. Yeah, pretty decent. Nothing unexpected here. So let's do a snapper-c root for config root and list. As you can see, it already did automatically a pre and a post snapshot, before and after, for my apt operation for installing neofetch. Very convenient. So now what we can do is we can do snapper status 1 and 2, 1.2. So that shows you what my operation of installing neofetch did to the system. So all the changes are shown here. You can look at them to your heart's content. So supposing, let's clear the terminal here. Supposing something went wrong with this apt operation, what you can do is you can type snapper-v undo change 1.2 for the pre and post. And that undoes the installation of neofetch. So now, if I type neofetch, you can see neofetch is gone. And I think, oh, well, you know, maybe I want neofetch back. Seems to work okay after all. So we just do the undo change, but this time to ... So you just reverse the order of the snapshots, and it undoes, it rolls back everything again. So you've got neofetch available to you again. And there you go. Snapper is that simple. And it's fully automated. And the snapshots with boots and timeline, etc., etc. So very handy, because now what we can do is get into the nitty-gritty here with adding some repos. So type echo colon, quote, http://deb.debian.org/debian unstable main contrib non-free, and we'll close the quotes here, and we'll pipe it to t-a/c/apt/sources.list. You can look at the Debian wiki how to do all this stuff. I'm just using that reference. So we want deb, and we also want deb-src, or source. Same thing here. So these two repo lines we need in the sources.list file. So let's check it now to make sure our edits took. It looks like these last two lines look properly formed. So there's some redundancy here, and we won't worry about it. It harms nothing. But it looks like we are ready to go with the next steps. So first step is, let's do some pinning here. Again, using the Debian wiki. Nano etc apt preferences. And the first package, package : asterisk for all packages, wildcard. We pin : release a equals bullseye. Again, the wiki tells you everything you need to know about what all these things do. We want to pin dash priority : 500. And next. So all this stuff, what I'm doing here, is to allow us to upgrade and update certain components of the system without touching the rest of the stable base, which is the mission today. So for package, for the kernel, we need Linux image AMD64 in my case. And we'll pin it to release, and A equals unstable, because that's where the latest kernel packages reside. And the pin dash priority : will be 900. Then finally, I want to do a package : asterisk. And we'll do pin : release A equals unstable. And we do the pin priority should be very low, because we don't want any other unstable packages creeping into our system in the future with updates, etc. So you want the priority very low. Good, so now our repos are locked in, or pinned. Our packages are pinned properly, hopefully. So now let's do an apt update. So that should immediately show one package that can be upgraded. I suspect it's the kernel. So let's do a copy paste of apt list -- upgradable. Sure enough, it is Linux Image AMD64 kernel 5.17.3, which is fairly recent as of the video record date of May 5th, 2022. Good enough for me, and it'll handle my new hardware. So let's do an apt upgrade -y. Get that new kernel in here. Much better than 5.10 for my equipment, as I've said. Okay, so generates the all the image, everything it needs. So let's reboot. And there we go. Hopefully we've got the new kernel now. So let's check by opening the terminal, making the font size a little bigger, and let's go to full screen. All right, uname-a. Ta-da! Kernel 5.17.3-1. Compiled April 18th, rather. Yep, ZRAM still functions. And looks like we are good. So let's continue. We've got the new kernel on our Debian stable Bullseye 11. Okay, so let's do a snapper list. As you can see, if this kernel upgrade went wrong, you've got another pair of pre and post snapshots for that, and also another single snapshot for our latest boot. So Snapper handles all these things automatically. So this is a great security blanket. If something should go wrong, you should not have a problem in rolling things back. Okay, let's prepare the apt preferences file for pinning for the GNOME 42 upgrade. So we'd like to pin the package Gnome Tweaks because we already have Gnome Tweaks installed. And so we need to make sure that's upgraded. So we do a release a equals unstable, and the pin dash priority will be 900. So it's high priority for upgrading Gnome Tweaks automatically. You may have to install this twice at the end. Sometimes Gnome Tweaks gets installed properly, sometimes it doesn't. It's easy fix. Just to let you know. Nothing's perfect. So let's apt list -- upgradable. Okay, there's one additional version, and that will of course be Gnome Tweaks. It'll go from 3.34 to 42 beta, which is the latest last I checked. Okay, so let's do an apt auto remove. Because Linux headers and kernel 5.10 stuff we no longer need, so let's get rid of it. Make sure the system is cleaned. Okay, so Gnome Tweaks is not upgraded yet because I want to install GNOME 42 first. All right, so in order to do that, let's clear the terminal. And let's issue the apt command -t unstable for pulling from the unstable repos. Install from them gnome-session gnome-shell gnome-backgrounds gnome-applets gnome-control-center Mutter, which is the window manager, and GJS, or GNOME JavaScript Interpreter, I believe. That's what it stands for. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section below. So this should do the trick for upgrading us to GNOME 42. Let's continue. And Yes, this is going to take some time, so I'll be video editing out the more boring chunks of this process. So please keep watching this video. There we go. It's done. So we should have GNOME updated to version 42. So before I forget, let's do the GNOME tweaks. apt-t unstable install GNOME-tweaks. Sometimes I've found through my testing that GNOME Tweaks doesn't always get installed or gets uninstalled for some reason. You may have to do this twice. Don't know why. Maybe you guys in the comments section can tell us why. So let's do an apt auto remove again and get rid of the old GNOME junk. Looks like there's stuff to remove, and we're clean again. All right, so let's reboot with fingers crossed. Here we go. Let's log in. Ah, that looks like GNOME 42. Okay, so let's launch the terminal again, increase the font size, full screen. So neofetch. So GNOME 42. Excellent. We're running a little over 1 gig memory usage. That's not too bad. In my experience, it'll settle down even more with usage. Nothing bad at all. So let's do GNOME shell -- version. It shows you, yes indeed, we're running shell version 42. Just to make sure you know I haven't cheated you, in this video, we're still on Bullseye. Yeah, so we've got kernel 5.17, GNOME 42 on Bullseye. All right. And we'll do a snapper list to show you. We've got 2 boot snapshots now, because we rebooted twice since the initial install. And we've got a bunch of pre and post pairs, in addition for all our latest apt operation. So we're good. Our security blanket is secure. Let's, as a root shell, let's apt install Flatpak, because I want to fix the extensions package to go from a Debian repo to FlatHub, which is what GNOME 42 recommends. So we got Flatpak, so let's apt install GNOME-software -plugin -Flatpak. So we can use the GNOME Software Center to do a switcheroo from Deb to Flatpak for the extensions. So let's add the remote repo with Flatpak remote-add -- if it doesn't exist already, if not exists. The following: FlatHub, which is https://flathub.org/repo/flatpak repo. That looks okay. Again, the FlatHub repository shows you how to install this remote repo. Okay, so let's close the terminal. Let's launch the Software Center. Welcome to software. Let's go shopping. Why not indeed? Software needs to be restarted to use the new plugins, namely the Flatpak plugin I just added. So this will take some time. And it's done. So let's search for extensions, which manages our GNOME extensions, which is very handy to have if you want to modify your GNOME install in any way. So as you can see, extensions has the Debian GNU Linux version. We don't want that. We want the FlatHub version, which has the latest and greatest version of extensions. So let's uninstall the Deb version and instead switch over to the FlatHub version. Install that instead. And that way, we've got our properly configured GNOME 42 system with extensions working properly from the GNOME website, the extensions website, or the local extensions program, which I'm showing you here. So as you can see, extensions is working properly. We won't be going into GNOME theming and modification extensions today. We want to keep this video as short as possible. It's long enough as it is. So let's go back to settings. And about shows, we're still on Bullseye. Didn't cheat you here. GNOME version is 42.1, which has been fairly stable. And yeah, looks like everything worked out. So there you go. Well, that worked better than I expected, and I would rather just use this setup than Ubuntu Jammy Jellyfish any day of the week. It's trivial to substitute another desktop should you so desire. Please comment, like, and subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell so you won't miss any of my new videos. Until next time, have fun and take care.